If you think Strip Weathers, better known as the King, was just a plot device to make Lightning McQueen look good, you have been watching the wrong movie for 20 years. You see a blue car with a massive spoiler and a mustache. You see a generic mentor figure designed to sell toys to children. But if you look closer, if you actually peel back the layers of that Dinoco blue paint, you find the most tragic, complex, and realistic figure in the entire franchise. You ignored him because the movie told you to focus on the red rookie, but the real story, the one that actually matters to adults, was happening in the background the entire time. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Mr. Blessed. Today, we are not just talking about a cartoon car. We are deconstructing the legend of the King to understand why he is the only character who actually escaped the corporate nightmare of the Piston Cup with his soul intact. By the end of this series, you will never look at that number 43 the same way again. Most of us have a memory of this character that is completely false. We remember him as the obstacle, the old guard standing in the way of the new generation. But this is the first mistake everyone makes. To understand the ending, you have to understand the beginning, and the reality of the King is much darker than a simple race. You have to understand that in the world of professional racing, there are two ways to leave the track. You either retire as a legend, or you get forced out by something younger, faster, and cheaper. The King was trying to do the impossible. He was trying to leave on his own terms in an industry designed to chew him up and spit him out. When you watch the opening race of the first film now, as an adult, pay attention to how the camera treats him. He is not fighting for attention, he is not desperate for the camera, like Chick Hicks, and he is not arrogant, like McQueen. He is tired. There is a specific weight to his suspension, a heaviness in his engine revs that the animators put there on purpose. This is a subtle detail that goes over a child's head, but it hits you hard when you are older. You are watching a champion who knows his time is up, desperately trying to hold on to his dignity for one last lap. This brings us to the real-world origin that explains everything about his behavior. The King isn't just a random design. He is a direct animated clone of the Plymouth Superbird driven by Richard Petty. This is critical context. The Superbird was a monster of engineering, a car so aerodynamic and so fast that NASCAR actually had to change the rules to ban it because it was unfair to the competition. It was a machine built for dominance. When you translate that history into the character of Strip Weathers, the subtext changes completely. He isn't just a good racer, he is a biological weapon on wheels that has slowly become obsolete. Think about the psychological horror of that for a second. You spent your entire youth being the aerodynamic pinnacle of your species, the one car that everyone feared, only to wake up one day and realize that the world has moved on to V8 engines and composite bodies that don't need giant wings to stay on the ground. The tragedy of the King is not that he is losing his skill, it is that he is becoming a relic while he is still alive. This is why his relationship with his wife, Linda, is so crucial, which we will get to later. She is the only one who sees the man inside the machine, while the rest of the world, including the sponsors at Dinoco, only see a billboard that is about to expire. But before we dissect his crash, that moment that traumatized an entire generation of kids, we need to talk about the lie. The lie is that the King was happy. If you watch his interviews in the film closely, you see a facade. He smiles for the cameras, he says the right lines about teamwork, but look at his eyes. He is surrounded by corporate sharks. He is carrying the weight of an entire company on his roof. He knows that if he loses this final race, his legacy isn't just over, it will be erased by the next shiny thing that comes along. That creates a level of pressure that would crush a normal person. This is where the contrast becomes sharp. On one side, you have McQueen, who thinks winning the Piston Cup is the meaning of life. On the other side, you have the King, who knows that the Piston Cup is a golden cage. McQueen wants to get in, the King is desperate to get out. And that dynamic sets up the most important conflict in the movie, which has nothing to do with racing and everything to do with survival. You might think you know what happens next. You think he races, he crashes, he gets pushed across the line, but that is the surface level reading. What actually happens on that track is a systematic dismantling of a hero, and to understand why it had to happen that way, we need to look at the physics of the crash itself. This wasn't just an accident, it was a message from the new world to the old world. If you enjoyed my breakdown of the deception in the Cars universe in my last video, The Lie We Believed for 17 Years, you are going to want to stay tuned, because what we are about to uncover regarding the darker side of Dinoco and the true cost of the King's career makes that look like a bedtime story. Let's talk about the sound of metal tearing against asphalt. When you watch that final race as a child, you see a bad guy pushing a good guy. But when you watch it with the eyes of an adult, you witness a brutal, calculated execution of a legacy. The crash that ends the King's career is not merely an accident. It is the physical manifestation of a new, ruthless era violently displacing the old. Chick Hicks does not just bump him. He deliberately destabilizes the aerodynamic balance of a legend, sending decades of history tumbling across the infield in a cloud of dust and debris. The violence of that moment is shocking because it breaks the unspoken rules of the sport. Until that second, racing was about speed and skill. In one move, it becomes about survival and aggression. You see the blue frame of the Superbird crumpling, the spoiler that defined his silhouette snapping under the pressure of the roll. It is a visceral, painful dismantling of dignity. The camera lingers on the wreckage not to scare you, but to force you to confront the fragility of greatness. One moment you are the idol of millions, and the next you are just a heap of scrap metal waiting for a tow truck. This brings us to the entity that everyone ignores but actually pulls all the strings: Dinoco. We see the blue helicopter and the golden sponsorship as the ultimate prize. McQueen chases it like a starving dog. But look at the King. He has worn that blue paint for decades. He knows exactly what that sponsorship costs. It is not just free fuel and private jets, it is ownership. Dinoco owns his image, his time, and his body. When he is wrecked on the side of the track, notice how the corporate machine pauses. They are not rushing to save a friend, they are assessing the damage to their asset. The tragedy of Strip Weathers is that he remained loyal to a system that was ready to replace him the moment his engine cooled down. He gave them loyalty, and in return, the sport gave him a career-ending injury. This is the dark reality of the Piston Cup universe that flies over the heads of the younger audience. It is a corporate grinder. The King is the only one who seems to understand that the trophy is hollow if you lose yourself to get it. When he is lying there, broken and upside down, the silence in the stadium is heavy. It is the silence of a crowd realizing that their heroes are mortal. But the most powerful moment is not the crash itself. It is the refusal to stay down. The internal mechanics of the King are screaming in protest. His frame is twisted, but the will of a champion forces him to keep his eyes open. He is not fighting for the win anymore. That dream is gone. He is fighting to finish. This distinction is crucial. The young rookies are racing for glory and contracts. The old veteran is racing for closure. He understands that if he doesn't cross that line, even on a tow hook, everything he built for 40 years vanishes into the category of failure. He has to finish to prove that he existed, to prove that he mattered. It is a desperate, clawing need for validation in a world that has already moved on to the next big thing. As we move toward the final lap, we have to analyze the psychological shift in the other racers. They watch a Titan fall, and for the first time, the blinders come off. They see their own future in that wreckage. This is the moment the movie stops being about cars and starts being about mortality. The realization hits McQueen not because he is a good person yet, but because he sees the ghost of his own future staring back at him from the smoke. But there is a deeper layer here, a secret pact between the racers that the cameras don't catch. To understand why McQueen stops, you have to understand what the King represents to him. He isn't just an old rival, he is the mirror. And what happens next creates a bond that goes beyond the track, a moment of respect that destroys the corporate script Dinoco wrote for the finale. But to truly understand the weight of that sacrifice, we have to look at what happened to the villain who caused it all, and why his victory felt more like a curse. Let's look at the man who actually won the race. Chick Hicks crosses the finish line. He gets the checkered flag. He gets the title. But look at the reaction. There is no applause. There is no admiration. The stadium is horrified. This is the most important lesson the movie teaches us about success versus significance. Chick Hicks achieved his goal. He became the champion. But in doing so, by wrecking the old master, he instantly transformed his victory into something worthless. He holds the trophy, but he is covered in shame. The confetti falls on him, but it feels like ash. He is the king of a graveyard, and he knows it. Now, shift your eyes back to the track. The silence is deafening. McQueen is inches away from the finish line. He is inches away from the Dinoco sponsorship, the private helicopters, the fame he has been chasing since the opening scene. And he slams on the brakes. That screech of burning rubber is the sound of a conscience finally waking up. It is the sound of a character realizing that the prize he wanted is actually a poison. He stops. He looks at the Jumbotron. He sees the wrecked blue frame of the king, struggling, broken, humiliated. And in that moment, McQueen realizes that if he crosses that line now, he becomes Chick Hicks. He realizes that winning this way is a form of spiritual defeat. So, he reverses. This is the moment that defines the entire franchise. He gives up the Piston Cup to go back for the man who paved the road for him. When he pulls up behind the king, he doesn't ask for permission. He doesn't make a speech. He just gently aligns his bumper with the wrecked rear end of the Superbird. The king, confused and in pain, tries to protest. He thinks it is over. But McQueen delivers the line that changes everything. He tells him that the race isn't over until he finishes. This isn't about charity. This is about respect. It is about the new generation acknowledging that they stand on the shoulders of the giants who came before them. As they move forward, listen to the crowd. The boos for Chick Hicks turn into a low rumble, and then into a roar. But it is not a roar for speed. It is a roar for honor. McQueen pushes him, not fast, but steady. He becomes the engine that the king no longer has. This visual metaphor is perfect. The rookie is literally carrying the legacy of the veteran across the threshold. It is a passing of the torch, but it is done with such physical tenderness that it makes you forget these are 2-ton machines. They cross the line together. The king finishes his last race not as a failure, but as a legend who was escorted home. And McQueen? He loses the cup. He loses the sponsorship. But look at his face. He has never looked more complete. He realizes that the Piston Cup is just an empty cup. It is just plastic and gold paint. The real victory was saving the dignity of the man who inspired him. This sacrifice is what separates a winner from a champion. Chick Hicks has the record, but McQueen has the respect. And the king? He gets to retire with his head held high, knowing that he didn't just teach McQueen how to race, he taught him how to be a man. But the story doesn't end on the track. The real ending happens in the pits, in the conversations that happen after the cameras stop flashing. And that is where we see the true character of Strip Weathers shine through. Let's freeze frame on the moment immediately after the race, because this is where the corporate mask of the Piston Cup finally slips off completely. Tex Dinoco, the billionaire oil tycoon, walks up to Lightning McQueen. He ignores Chick Hicks, the actual winner, and offers the Dinoco sponsorship to the guy who technically lost. On the surface, this looks like a reward for good sportsmanship. It looks like a nice old man rewarding a good deed. But if you are cynical, if you understand how this industry works, you see something much colder. Tex isn't just looking for a driver, he is looking for a brand ambassador who won't embarrass the stock price. The king is broken, Chick Hicks is a public relations nightmare, so McQueen is the only viable asset left. This is the crossroads. This is the moment where McQueen has to choose between the life he thought he wanted and the truth he just learned. And where does he look? He doesn't look at the helicopter. He doesn't look at the contract. He looks over at Strip Weathers. The king isn't surrounded by agents or lawyers. He is surrounded by his wife, Linda. They are having a private moment amidst the chaos. Strip is battered. His spoiler is gone. His alignment is destroyed. But he is smiling. For the first time in the entire movie, the king looks genuinely at peace. Why? Because he is finally free. The crash was brutal, yes, but it broke the contract. He doesn't have to race anymore. He doesn't have to be the face of the company anymore. He gets to go home. McQueen sees this. He realizes that the Dinoco blue paint isn't a badge of honor, it is a set of golden handcuffs. If he takes that sponsorship, he becomes the next king, which means eventually he will end up exactly like the king, wrecked on a track while the sponsor looks for his replacement. So when McQueen says no to Tex, he isn't just being humble. He is rejecting the entire cycle of abuse. He chooses to stay with Rusty's, a company that actually treats him like family rather than a conglomerate that treats him like a billboard. This decision is the direct result of watching the king bleed. Strip Weathers didn't just teach him how to drive. He taught him that the cost of being number one is your own humanity. Think about the irony here. The king spends decades being the perfect corporate soldier, and his reward is a broken frame. McQueen spends 1 week in a dusty town with a judge and a tow truck, and he learns more about dignity than Strip Weathers was allowed to express in 40 years of professional racing. But here is the beautiful part. The king isn't bitter. When McQueen declines the offer, look at Strip's face. There is a nod. It is barely visible, but it is there. It is the nod of a prisoner watching someone else escape the cell he was trapped in. He knows what McQueen is turning down, and he knows it is the right choice. This recontextualizes the king from a passive victim into a silent guardian. He took the hits, he took the pressure, and by being destroyed publicly, he inadvertently saved the next generation from making the same mistake. He became the cautionary tale that saved Lightning McQueen's soul. And we have to talk about Linda Weathers here. In a movie about machines, she brings the only real biological stakes. When her husband crashes, she doesn't care about the standings. She is terrified. That fear cuts through the cartoon logic. It reminds us that these cars have lives outside the circuit. The king has a home. He has a history. The fact that he survives to retire with her is the only true victory in the film. Chick Hicks has a trophy he can't enjoy. McQueen has a team, but no cup. The king has his life back. In the end, he is the only one who actually won the game, because he is the only one who got out. But there is one final piece of the puzzle, a lingering question about what happens to a legend when the world stops watching. The transition from the king to just Strip Weathers is a fascinating psychological journey that the sequels barely touch, but the subtext is screaming at us. To wrap this up, we need to understand the final lesson he leaves us with, a lesson that applies to every single person watching this video who is grinding for a boss that doesn't care about them. The final lesson that Strip Weathers leaves us with is simple, but it is the hardest one to accept. You are not your job. You are not your sponsorship. You are not the number painted on your door. The king spent his entire life being the fastest, the best, the untouchable icon of Dinoco. But the moment he hit the wall, the moment the physics of his age caught up with him, all of that stripped away. And what was left? Just a car, just a husband, just a mentor. If you are watching this and you are grinding 60, 70 hours a week for a boss who would replace you tomorrow if you broke down, you need to look at the king. He is the ghost of your future. You can be the highest performer, you can be the most loyal employee, but the corporate machine does not have a memory. It only has a ledger. The crash was the best thing that ever happened to him, because it forced him to stop running a race that has no finish line. In the later films, we see him return not as a racer, but as a crew chief. He finds joy in teaching. He finds purpose in guiding the next generation. This is the final evolution of a man who realized that significance is better than success. He doesn't need the roar of the crowd anymore, because he has the respect of his peers and the love of his family. He traded the golden cage for a quiet life, and that is a trade every single one of us should be willing to make. So the next time you see that blue Superbird on your screen, don't just see a side character. See a survivor. See a warning. See the only character in the entire franchise who looked the devil in the eye and walked away with his soul. He didn't lose the Piston Cup. He outgrew it. He realized that the cup was too small to hold the life he actually wanted to live. If you found value in this deep dive, if this changed the way you see a childhood classic, then you are ready for the truth about the protagonist himself. We talked about the mentor, but we haven't talked about the lie that started it all. If you want to understand the dark psychology that McQueen had to unlearn, you need to watch my previous video, The Lie We Believed for 17 Years. It exposes the hidden history of the racing world that the movies tried to hide from us. And trust me, once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Click that video on the screen right now. It is the missing piece of the puzzle that explains why the world of cars is more dystopian than you ever imagined. I am Mr. Blessed. Thank you for giving me your time, and remember, the race doesn't matter if you lose yourself to win it. I will see you in the next one. Peace.